Hello and welcome to Fast Money Football. I'm your host, Albert Vartanian, joined by my co-host today, the one and only Michael Singh, who's becoming viral every single week. Every time some news comes up for Toronto FC, Mikey Singh tweets it. My phone blows up, Twitter blows up. Mike, the latest news, AtibaHutchinson, you mentioned on Twitter. There's been some interest from Toronto FC. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, I think that any of those AtibaHutchinson talks are in the very preliminary stages. Hume came out and said there's no talks actually between Atiba yet and Toronto FC. But I can report that TFC are definitely interested in potentially making something like that happen, maybe as soon as this summer, which is very exciting because AtibaHutchinson means so much to the game in this country. And I think the Reds and Bob Bradley are very in tune with that. So we'll see if anything actually transpires, but right now it's just very early and too early to say if anything will actually come to fruition from that.
I would love that. One of my favorite players, honestly, one of my favorite Canadian players of all time, AtibaHutchinson. Would love to see him in Toronto, probably finish his career here, I'm assuming, if he does come here. But that's good news. Sebastian Giovinco. So there's been some sort of a mix-up. He was put on the Toronto FC roster, but he's not actually on the preseason roster.
Yeah, exactly. I think as you mentioned, just a small mix-up there by TFC this morning, and we got some clarification that, I mean, it's still positive news that Sebastian Giovinco has been invited to Toronto FC preseason training camp, invited to train with the club, and he has accepted that invitation. Now, we know Giovinco has voiced his desire to come back to Toronto FC in the past. There was, rumors that Giovinco and TFC actually had a deal that would see him return to the club this season. Obviously, that hasn't come to fruition as yet, but it's a step in the right direction. Right now, the biggest thing kind of keeping them apart is Giovinco's asking price and what Toronto FC are willing to pay Giovinco. But there's no real bad blood between the two parties. So if they can find a way to find a mutual ground here, that would be great news for TFC fans who are already anticipating an Italian superstar of their own in Lorenzo Insigne coming in the summer. And that'd be fun if Giovinco can join.
Andrea Bellotti also linked with Toronto FC. I feel like that's cooled down a bit, but what's the latest on that front? Because if they get him in and they can get him in as soon as they get Insigne in, I mean, you have two of who could become two of the best players in the MLS.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm still hearing there's nothing to that. I know TFC's party did check in on Bellotti earlier in the offseason, but there was nothing meaningful between the two parties, no meaningful talks. I still see a lot of rumblings going around. Yeah. And what I'm told is that that's a lot of his agent kind of at play here, trying to get Bellotti sort of the best offer, which, it happens fairly often. So I'm told not to get your hopes up in terms of a Bellotti move, but there are a couple other Italians playing in Serie A right now that could potentially make their way over in the summer. And that would be, even more exciting news for our Woodbridge folk.
Yeah, for the West, especially our own Luca Rosano. He'll love that.
Yeah.
A quick question about TFC. So we have Insigne coming in middle of the season or later on in the season. But going into the season at the beginning, it's pretty much the same team from last year. Do they need to head out and make some initial impact signings before Insigne comes in?
I think they do. I personally, I'm concerned about where the roster is right now. I objectively can't say that this team overall has gotten better from where it was last season when you consider the team lost someone like Richie Larea, who is so important to the squad, such an important player for the national team and really growing every year. He was, again, just a crucial piece, and they lost that. They lost Mark Delgado via trade, and they lost a number of veterans who departed the club last season. You can argue whether or not they were, an addition or subtraction, but nevertheless, it is MLS quality players that have departed, and in return, you're bringing in a lot of prospects, a lot of young guys who really don't have that experience yet. So on paper, I don't think they've gotten better, but the caveat to that is, of course, Bob Bradley now being at the helm. What does this team look like who finished second in the Supporters' Shield race just in 2020? What does this team look like under Bob Bradley? As well as, you're going to get back a healthy Alejandro Pozuelo for a full season. He was the MLS MVP in 2020, so that's an addition on its own. So there are a little bit of caveats to that, but I am concerned where this team is at right now.
Yeah, exciting times for TFC. And yeah, Pozuelo, he's kind of been in the shadow of Insigne, but that's almost like a new signing coming in for TFC as well. Super exciting, guys. if you want to know what's happening with TFC, breaking news, all that stuff, you got to follow my man Mike at Michael Singh 94. Follow him, notifications, the whole nine. But anyway, time to move on to some big games. Canada, Honduras. They haven't beat them in quite some time in Honduras, but this is a very different team. And we should probably start with the big news that we've known for a while now. Alphonso Davies, he's out. He's obviously dealing with some issues post-COVID. We wish him the best. How does John Erdman set up his team, and how does he adapt without Davies in that lineup?
It's certainly a big loss. I mean, as if you ever lose a player of Alphonso Davies' caliber, let alone on this Canadian men's national team where no one's kind of at that caliber, it's something that you can't really replace. But this team has shown in the past that it can be competitive without both Davies and Jonathan David.
Mm-hmm.
You think back as recently to the Gold Cup, and they made a deep run there. They lost to Mexico in the semifinals in a game you probably could argue that they could have won. And that was without both Davies and Jonathan David. Now, they will have the latter. They're heading into Honduras tonight and for the rest of this window, hopefully. And I think there's going to be a lot of pieces that will have to step up. You're looking at someone, as I mentioned before, Richie Larea, who will now play a bigger role down that wing, and same with Sam Adekugbe. Both guys who are very important to the width of that team. And then up top, you're looking at Kyle Larin, Tajon Buchanan, Jonathan David, Junior Hoylett to really step into the limelight now, into the spotlight, and take hold of what they're capable of doing. These guys are all very talented players, and I'd argue even with Davies out, they still have the best attack probably in the entire region. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going to be able to handle that absence. However, of course, it's still a notable loss.
You know, Honduras, obviously, they haven't been that good. One of the worst teams in the CONCACAF. I think they're last, and their home form is just absolutely horrible. They haven't won a game there. But psychologically, does that play on this Canada team? I know it's a different team. It's a different manager, different players, new generation, the golden generation, whatever you want to call it. But those past results, you think that's going to play on these players?
I think it has to. It has to, right? Like, everyone knows what it's like to, if you haven't heard, then, you know, everyone knows kind of what it's like to play on Honduras.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the national team players are well versed on that. John Herman's told them, and Honduras is one of the toughest places in the region to play. I've been told it's the toughest by some people. And that's because of the rabid fan base and kind of what they're doing down there to make that environment so hostile for the Canadian men's national team. You hear stories of, you know, bags being filled with urine and thrown at players while on the pitch.
Insane.
You hear stories of block parties being thrown outside hotel rooms and just not being in a very comfortable environment. So it's very tough to win in Honduras. I think when Honduras have played at home against Canada, they haven't lost in the last 4 encounters. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned there, Albert, these are two teams heading in separate directions right now. Honduras is bottom of the CONCACAF qualifying table, while Canada's at the top. Honduras have lost 5 matches in a row. Canada, on the other hand, they're unbeaten so far through 8. So it's a new generation, and is a way for Canada to exercise some demons today is by going out there and showing that they can pick up a result in Honduras, which won't be easy.
A lot of MLS players are on this team, and Major League Soccer is obviously in the offseason, which means these players aren't playing. I don't want to say they're coming off the couch, but obviously they're not completely match fit, or as match fit as they possibly could be because they're not playing. Is that a big factor for Canada? I know they still have a lot of quality from European players and you know, people who are playing abroad, but not having those players on the pitch consistently and now jumping into a team cold somewhat, is that going to be a big issue for them?
You know, it's tough to say, because on the one hand, Canada don't often rely too heavily on a lot of those MLS players. It's now gone to the point where a lot of this roster is playing abroad. And of course, you think about a move like Larea to Nottingham Forest over the transfer window, January transfer window, and he was a key starter for them. And that's another piece that's gone to Europe. The only kind of mainstays as MLS players in this roster I can think of off the top of my head are, you're looking at someone like an Alistair Johnston and a Kamal Miller. Those are sort of the only 2 right now that are everyday kind of players. So I don't think that'll factor in too much because A, the season wasn't that long ago, and B, these guys have been gearing towards this for a very long time. So I don't think that'll come into play too much, but it is noteworthy for sure.
Yeah, Canada has 7 players currently who are 1 yellow card away from being suspended, and some key names on there: Richie Larea, Vittoria, Anthony Kay. You think that'll play into Herdman's rotation over these next 3 games? I mean, it's 3 games in 7 days, 2 away and 1 at home on Sunday against the USA.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say it has to, because I think the big one for them in this window is, of course, that USA match. But on the other side, you can think about it this way: does Herdman kind of go for it in Honduras, and sure, he picks up 3 points, and then whatever happens in the US match, that's kind of house money you're playing with. So I think that is absolutely going to factor in his decision one way or another if he does decide to go play those guys or not. But I do think he is probably going to take this one match at a time, as I kind of talk it out to myself here.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in that Honduras game, because it's going to be a battle, and that's what's going to happen. And yellow cards can start piling up in a game like that. So they need to be careful. It'd be interesting to see what Herdman's starting 11 is going to be. Now, what everyone wants to know, Mike, your prediction for the game.
Well, Canada right now, they're at minus 110.
Yeah.
On the money line to win straight up. And honestly, as I've mentioned, like, this is a different Canada team. It's a new generation, and they've been the best team in the region so far. So I believe they'll continue that, especially with John Herdman at the helm. He's instilling a lot of belief in this squad. So I'm predicting that Canada comes out with the victory tonight in Honduras, which will be a historic victory.
Mikey, I'm with you. And you know what? I actually found Canada even money. If you find them at even money, it's out there. I would take it. Honduras, they can see it at home, like I mentioned. 9 goals in their last 4. It's going to be tough, but the quality is there for Canada. We got to stop thinking about this Canada team as they were in the past when they got to Honduras. This is a legitimate team, even, as you mentioned, without Alphonso Davies. We got to talk about a couple of these other games, some predictions. Let's start with Jamaica against Mexico. Jamaica really need a result. Mexico, Mike, missing some 2 key players, Raul Jimenez and Hirving Lozano.
Yeah, I think those will definitely be key losses for Mexico. Jamaica, on the other hand, they're rolling right now. After a very slow start in the group, they're looking to go 5 games in a row where they haven't lost, and that includes a draw to Canada, who has been one of the highest scoring teams. And I'll add, Jamaica is a very tough place to play. The field is not as polished or as nice as some of the other pitches in CONCACAF, and again, like similar to Honduras, that sort of environment definitely factors in. But I will say is Mexico's hungry. They're unfortunately coming off back-to-back losses to the United States and Canada. And this is a group that's known to kind of take this group take advantage of this group, this CONCACAF group. They're known to finish first every time with their eyes closed, but it's not happening this year. So I think they take that personally. So for that reason, I'm actually going to take Mexico to beat Jamaica. That's my prediction. They're at minus 134 right now.
No, and those are decent odds, to be honest. Mexico minus 134. I'm going to go with Jamaica double chance, draw or win, plus 110. They need a result. I think they're playing well. Jamaica, like you said, is a tough place to play. Mexico missing 2 key players, so we'll see how that pans out. USA, El Salvador. USA big favorites, minus 550. I'm going to stay away from this one. I think the States are going to win. I don't want to lay the minus 550. I don't know if they win by more than a goal, because my next thing was like, maybe I'll back them by 2 goals or something like that. But I think this is a complete stay away from me.
Yeah, especially when you consider El Salvador is going to be missing a key player in Eric Zavaleta for them. And he's been so important at the back. He's their captain, and the U.S., they're unbeaten in their last 18 games at home.
Crazy.
And El Salvador is not doing too well away from home. So I'm definitely picking the U.S. here to absolutely run away with it.
Oh, I like that, Mike. And finally, Panama, Costa Rica. Costa Rica plus 125. Panama plus 260. I think I'm going with Panama here at the draw no bet, plus 130. So if they draw, you get your money back. If they win, you win your money. So the last 4 times they played, Costa Rica are winless in 3 of those 4 games. Mike, I mean, this is a tough one. I think this is more of a pick 'em, and that reflects obviously in the odds. But I'm going Panama, draw no bet.
For me, this is the most intriguing matchup of the 4 matchups right now. These 2 teams are in 4th and 5th respectively in the CONCACAF qualifying group, and it's going to be one that really kind of determines whether or not, determines the way this group plays out. because if Costa Rica wins, they're right back in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And if Panama wins, there's that separation between the top four and the rest of the group, major separation, which is quite notable because that not only helps Panama's case to potentially qualifying for the World Cup in 2022, but if Canada can pick up 3 points here and Costa Rica loses, then they're all but secure their place in the top four. So at least a play-in spot for that World Cup qualifying, which is very exciting news for Canadians. But with that in mind, Costa Rica has their back against the walls. They're a very good side. I think Panama has really surprised a few people with the way that they've been playing. So I am actually going to take Costa Rica here. They're at plus 125. So I do believe that they will find a way, especially with their backs against the wall.
All right, you heard it there from Big Mike. Finally, I want to hit you with this one. Canada, 3 games in 7 days. From those 3 games, how many points?
Who? I say 7 points.
Oi, that's unbelievable in 3 days.
Yeah, that would be a very good result, but yeah. I'm confident. I'm confident in this Canadian men's national team. As I said, they're a completely different squad, and I have no reason to sort of doubt that they are one of, if not the best team in this region. So I'm laying my money where my mouth is. I'm going to say 7 points out of 9.
Mike, you know exactly what to say to me, buddy. Thank you so much for joining me. Follow him at Michael Singh 94 for all your CanMT news, parlay content, TFC news. He's got everything. He's Johnny Viral. He's Michael Singh. I'm Albert Vartanian. If you want to watch more parlay content, which you probably should, head over to parlay.tv. Good luck today. Go Canada, Mike.
There we go. Let's go Reds.